You're listening to this week's episode of the Vacation Rental Business in Today's World podcast. You're about to start transforming your business and life with the information found here. We interview some of the greatest and most influential minds in the vacation short-term rental industry and supporting businesses. The information found here is a combination of brain science, transformational thinking, safety and loss prevention, and vacation short-term rental knowledge and experiences, all rolled into one to help you and your business to achieve levels you never thought possible. I am glad you are here, and now please welcome your host, Eric Thibodeau.
Hello everyone, welcome back. We're back here and we have Dr. Patrick Smith here with us, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about energy management and sustainability, something we don't talk a lot about in vacation rental industry, but I think it would be good. Welcome, Patrick.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And so where are you at today?
So I'm based in Little Rock, Arkansas, and I'm at my home office. So I apologize in advance for any dog barks or yelling children in the background.
No problem. So you're in Arkansas. Yeah, I'm in Friendswood, Texas here, and doing okay here. This is our home, and we have our business in Gulf Shores, Alabama. And so we were there last week working on some hurricane damaged property. So, but good. Well, welcome, and give us a little bit of background on you and your experiences.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm a consultant. Work for a company called REM Risk Consultants. My background is in fire protection and safety, and a lot of industrial type settings, manufacturing, general industry. I also have a background in data analytics, and my PhD was in industrial engineering with a focus on energy management. So I have a fairly broad background, but all kind of under the sustainability umbrella, if you will. So, we work with clients ranging from individual homeowners on occasion all the way to, large manufacturing facilities, helping people solve problems. And it's always different, but it's a lot of fun. So.
Great. Yeah. So since you have a safety background too, so we hear discussions about being proactive in safety and loss prevention.
Sure.
How would you describe safety and loss prevention and being proactive? And then how would we apply that to the vacation rental industry?
Yeah, I think, for the vacation rental industry, the key thing would be to be informed about that potential hazards that would be associated with your property, how similar properties have maybe handled those hazards, or maybe things that have happened at other properties, and just being proactive. Often with vacation rentals, preventative maintenance would be obviously a big item to reduce your risk and help mitigate potential losses and safety issues. But I think just staying informed as much as possible would be the key thing. So
great. Okay. And then so we're going to talk about sustainability. So what is sustainability?
Yeah. That's a great question. Often that's kind of a buzzword nowadays. Almost it gets thrown around a lot. But in general, there's kind of three domains of sustainability. There's the environment, there's the economic side, and there's the social side. So I think in context of vacation rentals, having obviously economical, sustainable businesses is important. Being able to make money renting out your properties, but that does often tie into the environment in terms of energy consumption, energy usage. Since you have a lot of properties potentially, or at least a couple, your footprint compared to the average citizen is going to be larger, and managing the energy that you use in those properties will not only help make your footprint smaller, but it would also help increase your profits, since you're expending less money to run these properties. So I think that those two things kind of work together when it comes to vacation rentals.
Yeah, and how can we use this to improve our business?
Exactly. So being more sustainable would help you to be better stewards of the environment, and improve your bottom line by spending less money on utilities and things like that. So
it'd be helpful in revenue generation. Basically, we're reducing
Yes,
energy footprint, saving money.
exactly.
Yeah. When I talked to the folks in Europe last week, and they were, they used one of the other parts about just certainly the part about the environment was important, but just around sustaining the workers and the work culture, if you will, in
Hmm.
that part of Spain was
Sure.
important. Having sustainable jobs for people.
Hmm.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
sustainability.
Well,
I like the three buckets you mentioned.
yeah, and it's kind of an ever evolving term, and it means different things, kind of in different contexts. But that's a good general kind of way to look at it. So
Great. So let's review a few. I'm sorry. Yeah, let's review a few topics in where
yeah,
rental owners can save money and address sustainability. So the first one is understanding paybacks from energy improvements. So what kind of
yeah,
improvements can you make?
and if you don't mind, I'd like to talk about just a few energy management basics first, just to kind of
Sure.
get everyone on the same page.
Sure.
Um, so I think a key thing when you're starting to look at how you can save energy in a property and ultimately save money is first understanding where your energy is coming from. So if you have properties in different municipalities, for example, you may have multiple utility companies that you're dealing with. So I think the first step when you're starting to scrutinize your energy consumption would be identifying, do you have an all electric home? Do you have gas? Obviously, you'd have water bills, but identifying what utility companies you're dealing with and what services you're purchasing. And the second step would be to looking at how you're being billed for those services, identifying what's your cost per unit. So for electricity, for example, the cost per kWh would be a common unit of energy consumption. For gas, you might see CCF on your bill, which would be 100 cubic feet of gas. You might see MMBTU. That would be unlikely. That's an industrial size unit. That'd be millions of British thermal units. But understanding your bill and what units are on there, and ultimately what your cost per unit in terms of energy unit you're being billed at. Once you kind of understand that, then it would help uh, better help you to understand what improvements you make and how that's going to impact the money that you're going to save as a result of those improvements. So I think once you start out on trying to identify energy savings opportunities, kind of identifying how you're being billed is the first step. Um, and then also understanding where your drivers of energy consumption uh, what those are in your property. So looking at the main systems, if you will, in your house, whether that's your heating and cooling system, for example, your lighting, if you have large appliances like dishwashers, laundry, hot water heater, if you potentially have a pool or some other type of large consumer, understanding what those systems are. And if you take a typical month utility bill, trying to figure out and estimate what percentage of that bill is attributed to each of those large systems. So, for example, in a typical home, about 30% is going to go to your HVAC system. And that'll change obviously based on the climate that you're in and the season of year that you're in if you're in a heating or cooling season. But figuring out where the energy in your property is being consumed is going to be kind of a key thing before you start trying to manage that energy, because you'll be able to identify how you can make the biggest impact by going after the big consumers first, rather than worrying about, say, plug loads, really small users. Try to identify where you can make the most bang for your buck first.
Yeah. So basically, do a little research about your own property because you may be there frequently, or you,
Exactly.
you just think you may know. But when you sit down and look at it and say, "Hey, here's where I'm getting all my utilities from, and
Yeah.
here's the consumption, and then what's the big drivers?"
Yes. And I think taking it a step further, um, you know, if you have a single family home that you're renting, for example, versus maybe an apartment or a condo type unit, looking at typical energy consumption data, and there's historical data out there and nationwide data, regional data, looking at consumption per square foot and what's typical for something of that size and that type of structure and that location, and just kind of checking to see how your property stacks up, to others. So, for example, for a single family home built, around 2000 to 2009, 100 BTU per square foot is a typical kind of average energy, consumption metric. And when I say BTU per square foot, that would be a combination of both electric and gas converted into BTUs. So taking your kilowatt hour consumption and whatever your gas unit consumption is per month, converting it into BTUs and dividing by the square feet of your property. So there are ways that you can kind of benchmark yourself or your properties against what a typical property similar to yours uses to see how you're doing. And that would kind of give you a good starting point of, whether you're below or above the average as to what you could expect a reasonable improvement or goal could be to work towards.
Okay, good idea. So now we've done
Yeah.
some research. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So getting back to your question about paybacks, the typical kind of term that's used when you're looking at energy, just doing kind of a simple calculation, would be a simple payback period. People may be familiar with that term from other areas, but you're basically dividing the cost of an improvement by the savings expected. And while that seems like a fairly simple calculation, and the calculation is, the savings part is going to be the more difficult number to arrive at and get a reasonable expectation of what your improvement might generate in terms of savings. The cost component, that's fairly straightforward. If you're talking about, say, replacing a heating and air conditioning system, that cost. To figure out what your expected savings would be, that'll partly depend on your occupancy rate. Talking about vacation rentals, so how often you think people will be in the building, so your run times, things like that. What your utility rates are in the area. If those change, if they go up, then you're going to save more money, which is kind of a strange thing to think about. But because you may save the same amount of energy, but if you're looking at the dollar component, that's going to be tied to your cost of electricity or gas. And then, sometimes the weather may impact your savings paybacks. If you're replacing, say insulation, for example, and you have a really hot year or a milder than average year, you may save more or less than kind of your expected amount. So I think, looking at it in terms of a simple payback, though, for most vacation rentals properties and homeowners, that would be an easy way to kind of gauge the amount of time it would take for the improvement to pay for itself. So,
Okay. So so we want to understand several variables when we're looking at the paybacks, and it's also influenced, as you mentioned, by the cost of the utility, which may increase.
right. Typically, that's a pretty stable number, but that could have an impact. So, at least being aware of, like we mentioned earlier, how you're being charged and what those rates are going to be a component of calculating your expected savings from doing any type of improvement.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and some of these can be significant. I mean, we replaced some HVAC units in some of our houses and properties, and immediately could tell a big difference because
yeah,
they're more efficient than they were even 10 years ago or 5 years ago.
right. And then, just to, I think, circle back to something else I mentioned is the understanding how, if you're talking about, the system level, how that system is being used within the property. So if it's a dishwasher or a water heater, kind of at least having a little bit of understanding of how your rental is being utilized. If someone, or if on average your tenants aren't maybe doing a lot of clothes, right? They're not washing a lot of clothes, then your payback may be longer from a improvement on a washing machine, since the utilization is a little lower. But if it's something like lighting, converting to LEDs, and kind of roughly how many times a month that unit is being rented, and take an average of say 8 hours a day the lights are on, you can kind of at least slowly start to back into a reasonable number of what you might expect to save on that particular improvement.
Okay. So that's one thing we can do is so understand the paybacks if we're going to make some changes. So what's an
Yeah,
easy way to improve energy usage, such as lighting upgrades or low flow toilets or shower
yeah,
heads,
yeah,
things like that?
exactly. So um, there would be several easy ways that you could make improvements. Um, so there's kind of two ways you could do this. You could either replace an existing, whether it be a light fixture or piece of equipment, or you could manage how an existing piece of equipment is used in a different way. So, for example, with smart thermostats, now you're able to set maximum and minimum set points. So you avoid someone from, say, freezing out your unit, right, and running up the bill in the summer. You might be able to cap out the minimum to say 65 or 67, rather than allowing it to be turned down or up higher than you might prefer. So managing existing usage would be one thing. Another example would be, say, an occupancy sensor with the same lights that you have installed, putting in some type of occupancy sensor control to minimize the amount of time that the light is on when it's not needed. So good examples of where you could do that would be, say, a closet or garage, or maybe a pantry, something where if there's potential for a light to be left on for an extended period of time, even though that may be a fairly small amount of energy, it'll add up over time and over multiple properties. So, so
That
that's one.
that just works off of motion.
Yes, yeah. Often it's a passive infrared sensor is a common technology. So it works off of someone essentially walking in front of it. That would trigger the sensor to turn on. Yeah, so managing existing systems would be one example, and then making improvements to others would be another example. So, replacing lighting with LEDs anymore, that's a pretty safe bet in terms of getting a good payback out of it. Installing a programmable thermostat, replacing an old, manual thermostat or analog thermostat with something that is digital and able to be set up with a schedule or managed a little better. Low flow toilets and shower heads, oftentimes your aerator. So I have an example of an aerator here that would be in your sink or your kitchen sink, bathroom sink. Oftentimes from the store, this is going to be like a 2.2 gallon per minute flow rate you can buy for very inexpensive and replace yourself. It just threads in and out of the faucet a 1.5 or half gallon um, aerator, so it would reduce your water consumption every time that faucet is used. Same thing for toilets and shower heads. If you're in an area like California where you have very high water costs, that would pay for itself very quickly. Um, Things like weather stripping around your windows and doors, for fairly inexpensive, you can get an infrared camera, and that would help you to identify, hot spots, if you will, leaky areas where outside air is infiltrating into your building. Um, that air that's coming in is unconditioned, so it's going to increase the load on your heating and cooling system, which will in turn cost more energy, more money. Um, Water heaters in properties that use less than like 41 gallons a day is kind of the rule of thumb. You can expect anywhere close to 25% savings over a traditional water heater. So in a vacation rental where you may have lower usage of water than a traditional home, those are beginning to be more cost effective to install and quicker paybacks on those. Um,
How are Patrick? How are tankless water heaters between, let's say, gas or electric? How good are they?
sure. So comparing a tankless electric to a tankless gas water heater, is that your?
Right. Yes.
So, that would come back in part to the location of the property and the cost of the utilities in that area. So, depending on the area in the country that the property was located in, you'd have to kind of do the analysis on what's more cost effective or less expensive to purchase, whether it's gas or electricity. In terms of efficiency, I don't think that there's a large difference between the two. Um, but I think that in terms of cost, it would just kind of have to be determined based on your local cost per operation of either gas or electric.
Okay, so the efficiency of either one is relatively the same. It's just cost
Yes,
of utility that would make the big difference.
yes, and I think the tankless, like I said, um, around 40, 41 gallons a day. If you're using less than that a day, then I think that there's good justification to install a tankless water heater over a traditional, 40-gallon tank of water sitting in your house. So,
Yeah. Good. Okay.
um, some other easy ways to improve energy that are more on the maintenance side would be things like cleaning condenser coils or evaporator coils in your heating and cooling units. That's shown to save between 5 and 12% of your um, energy costs. Changing filters regularly. Having a clean air filter means that your heating cooling system is working less hard. Um, so those are kind of more maintenance items, but
Right.
easy ways that you can ensure that you're using less energy.
Yeah. So all these are good preventative and proactive steps we can take to either improve what we currently have or install something new.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. Those are both good options. I think we
Yeah.
often think of just I'm going to replace something instead of just saying how can I adapt some technology today to what I currently have.
Right. Right.
Yeah, that was a good point.
Yeah.
Good. So what about utility rebates or incentives?
Yeah. So, depending on where you're located in the country, you may have a more or less proactive utility company. But for example, here in Arkansas, Entergy is my utility provider for electricity, and they have a program right now where I was able to get free smart thermostats installed in my home. They offer free um, energy assessments. And I think along with that, it includes added insulation if they find that there's lacking insulation in your house, depending on the age. They address things like weather stripping. So I think that I would encourage everyone to first identify who their utility companies are if they don't know that already, and then call or look on their websites to look for programs that might be beneficial and offer either free or low cost improvements. Often there are rebates available. Um, this is true for both electric and gas companies. It's not uncommon that if you're going to replace a water heater or an air conditioning system, that they may offer a rebate to help you choose a more efficient system, something with a higher efficiency value. There oftentimes are programs out there that can assist and um, help help you with those types of improvements. So that's a key thing to check for before you do any type of upgrade.
There's also some utility companies, because individuals are passionate about sustainability, and you could sign up at your utility company, let's say for all wind electric in some parts
Right.
of the country. So maybe
Yeah.
you pay a little bit more, but I mean, if you were really into the sustainability model, you could.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I think that increase in cost helps to fund those types of efforts on the utilities behalf. So yeah, there's definitely stuff like that out there. And um, yeah, so
Yeah, and so just check with your company, your utility provider, for what they're offering, different packages, different services um, in your particular area.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, good. So since you've completed so many site assessments, how has this helped maybe owners improve revenue generation or protect their profits? One of the things I've found, someone told me, is that hey, if you can find a way to generate revenue from safety or loss prevention, you're going to be doing really well. And so I said, well, sometimes we can't always generate revenue, but can we protect what we have through
Sure.
programs? So what
Yeah.
have you found that would fit some of those categories?
Well, I can say that on the energy management side, I've never done an assessment where I did not find some way to save energy um, in a cost-effective way. So there's always something out there. There's always a low-hanging fruit, so to speak, that has been missed or just put off in terms of improving. Um, and and so I think that is that's one thing that would help in terms of protecting profits is continuing to shrink your footprint in terms of energy consumed without minimizing the experience at the property. From the safety and loss control side of things, I think what you stated reflects my experience as well as being able to help reduce people's risks and identify potential hazards or issues before they become something that impacts the property helps to protect those profits. So helps to minimize the chance of something bad happening, so to speak. So
Right. Great. Great. So we need to be doing more than just identifying and eliminating hazards. We need to have a good process to review our energy consumption, management, and sustainability on a regular basis.
mhm.
What is an example of something we can do in our vacation rental businesses to look at some of these aspects?
Yeah, well, I have a couple examples. So in terms of circling back to earlier, we talked about identifying where your energy drivers are, what your energy usage are. I meant to show this is an example of something called a kilowatt meter. You just plug it in. This would be for plug load type stuff.
Hmm.
Easy way to track it. It would tell you up on the screen how many kilowatt hours have been used by whatever's plugged in. A lot of smart plugs now will also track energy usage. You plug in this to the wall, plug in your device to this, and you can see what's been consumed over time. So I think that in general industry as well as the vacation rental and just homeowner um, stuff in general is going to be moving more to smart technology that lets you kind of track and watch your energy consumption in real time and store that. I think to review energy consumption on a regular basis, whether it's in Excel or using oftentimes the utility company's own websites, they let you see your historic usage over time. But I think at least just tracking that on a monthly basis and kind of looking for trends and maybe unusual spikes that might indicate, say, a water leak. If you see a huge change in your water bill and you hadn't made any changes that would indicate a need for that, just kind of being more, I guess, attentive to changes in consumption that might indicate some type of preventative maintenance issue.
Just give us an idea. So I've had it in some of my properties. Your toilets have these slow little water leaks.
Yeah.
Uh, and then next thing you know, your next bill is like $300.
Hmm.
So, I mean, is that fairly true? I mean, how much water would one of these leak over a day or a month period of time?
Exactly. Yeah, I've seen statistics where if you look at just like a leaky faucet, just kind of a slow, steady drip, that can equal, it's around like 1,500 gallons a month or a year potentially, and depending on uh, your location, that could add up to quite a bit of money. So um, if you
Right.
if you kind of identify what you understand, what systems you have, you understand the efficiencies of those systems and rough use times, you should be able to fairly easily get a ballpark number of what your consumption should be. Um, and then that would kind of help you identify when something's out of whack, something's been running longer than you expected it to, or is using more energy than you would expect.
Right, and your water usage, so you pay for your water. Let's say it's
Mhm.
extra 1,500, and let's say it's just $1 a gallon, but then you're
Sure.
going to pay anywhere from another 1,500 or 750 maybe for sewer disposal. You know,
Correct.
so
Yep.
maybe you spent $1,500, but you may have another 1,500 in
Mhm.
sewer costs. So I mean that's $3,000 a year.
Sure.
That's a lot.
Yeah. So all those preventative maintenance type items can add up, especially if you're managing multiple properties and that's distributed across multiple utility accounts. So
Yep, exactly. And I know some condo associations pay for the water, and we say, well, we don't worry about you know the association's paying for the water, but I guess if you're in that condo association, you're paying for the water. So
exactly.
so don't write off just because
Yeah.
you're directly paying for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
Good. So what's one of your big goals as you're heading into 2021, maybe for you or at your company?
Yeah, for me personally, I'm working towards my PE, my professional engineering license. So I'm hoping to take that exam at the end of this year and move myself along professionally. For our company, we just hired another employee, so we're continuing to grow and just continuing to look for new clients that we can assist and help manage their risk in different areas. So.
Great. Yeah, is there anything that I didn't cover that you'd like to mention?
I think the only thing that I would mention in addition is, I think to me, the end goal of all of this, identifying your energy consumption, kind of drilling down on what your drivers are, would then to be ultimately be able to help you and property owners kind of predict the profit from an individual stay once they understand, how much a typical stay costs in terms of energy. Then that really the goal would be to help better predict your true profit after expenses of a typical rental. So that to me is the goal of this, in addition to reducing your footprint, but maximizing your profit and kind of understanding how to calculate that when you have this kind of unknown of the utility bill at the end of the month that may or may not be what you would expect otherwise. So.
Okay, great. Yeah. So Patrick, thanks. If anybody in the audience wanted to get in touch with you to learn more about your work and REM risk, how would they do that?
Sure. My email is psmith@remrisk.com. And if you go to our company website, which is remrisk.com, it has all of our social media type links at the bottom, and you can contact us or myself directly through there as well.
Great, Patrick. We appreciate the information and update on sustainability in vacation rentals. We appreciate it.
Of course, yeah. Hopefully it's been helpful, and thank you for having me.
No problem. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you for listening to Safer VR's podcast with Eric Thibodeau. If you enjoy this, I would love you to join my Facebook group, The Safer Vacation Rentals, for more of the same. You can also join our email list at www.safervrs.com.